mean, I first met you in 1976 at the Dick Grove Music Workshop school that he had back out here in LA. And I was always amazed because as a player, you always raised the bar. Your musicality, your technique, your understanding of the instrument was always at an extremely high level. Then you got involved with education, where you got involved with clinics and globally reaching people about sharing your level of education. Where did all of this start for you? When you were younger, how did music enter your life?
Well, I used to run away from home when I was about 5, because 2 blocks away at the local college, they had kind of like a ROTC program. They'd have the cadets marching and just drums playing to set the rhythm for them.
Yeah.
So they would do all their maneuvers and stuff, and I would run along beside the drums. Then I'd get in trouble for running away from home, which was 2 blocks away. So one day, this one drummer asked me on a break, says, can you play the drums, kid? I said, yes, I can. So let me see. He hands me his sticks, and I started playing on the parade drum that he's holding. He went to my mother and said, it's a crime if this kid doesn't get lessons.
How powerful.
He's got so much talent, and he's had no training. He said, Mrs. Burns, you've got to get him some lessons. I never found out who that guy was.
How interesting.
But he got it started with my mother. And my mother was a powerhouse. She would tell you that I had this drive, and she didn't know where I got it. But she was the driving force, I'll tell you. So that's what got me started. And I would practice like a demon. And I took some lessons at the local college. The head of the department was a violinist. There was no percussion teacher there in Emporia, Kansas. But he had a great saying. He said, Roy, it's one thing to have good hands. You've got to use your noodle. That was his favorite expression. You've got to use your noodle. Yeah. You're playing music. You must think. You can't just play without thinking. Use your noodle. And he was the first real influence on me.
So when you were learning, was there music in your family? Were your parents musical at all? Was there?
My great-grandfather on one side of the family, his name was Blair, and he was from what was called the old country. I think it was Wales. He was a violin player.
Oh, interesting.
And I remember seeing him, and I have a picture of him mentally, but I never got to talk to him about anything. But if there was a musician in the family, he was the one.
He was the one.
Yeah.
And you started playing, you're taking lessons now, so when did your first professional gig happen where you started to play with a band?
Well, when I was 13. I was taking lessons from this drummer. He was in the band. They were all guys going back to school on the GI Bill after World War II.
Yeah.
So they were older and experienced much more than the average college student.
Interesting.
So he was leaving town to get a job as an art teacher. And they'd tried everywhere. There was no other drummer. So I got in the band by buying his drum set. Because he gave up playing the drums then and became an art teacher. Later became the local dean at the college in Emporia that I eventually went to for a year.
Wow.
So he was influential.
And what kind of music was it?
Well, it was big band music, dance music, pop music. We're talking, if I was born in 1935, so in 1945 I was 10. And I'd already been taking lessons for several years.
Wow.
So the music of that day was big bands.
So was it like Glenn Miller and those
Benny
were the pop
Goodman,
tunes, Benny Goodman at that
Harry
time?
James.
So you started listening, so you'd be listening to Benny Goodman and playing some of his songs.
Yeah.
And then eventually in time, as you started to play, you stayed, you moved to New York. When did that happen?
Well, before we get there, he discovered, or someone discovered, the Benny Goodman Carnegie Hall concert in 1938.
Yeah.
On a wire recorder. I never knew there was such a thing.
A wire recorder when Gene was playing drums, yeah.
So they transferred it to tape, and it was the first popular music long-playing record that Columbia issued.
How powerful.
Because up to then it was all 10-inch.
Right.
So you couldn't get too much music on one side.
Yeah.
Well, 11 years after I bought that record, I was on the band in New York. Like a Twilight Zone thing. And how it came to, I went to New York was I was studying in Kansas City, which was 4.5 hours by train from my home. Wow. So I'd take 9 hours of traveling in a 24-hour period to take a drum lesson. And the drum teacher, Jack Miller, charged me $2 for the lesson. He'd often buy me dinner and drive me to the train station and put me on the train so I wouldn't get home to go home at night. Then 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd be in psychology class. And 1 year I went to college.
That's amazing.
So playing with that local band and taking those lessons really set me up to want to be a professional drummer. And I listened to all the swing big band drummers. And my style came from listening to Buddy, Louie, Gene, guys like that.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Well, that was a driving force at that time. Those guys
It
were
was,
playing.
yeah.
They were playing. Their music was everywhere. They were doing so much.
And the drummers were featured.
Yeah.
If you could be a good drummer and play a solo, you were worth that much more money to the band.
And Gene really was the first one that kind of did that, right?
He broke it open for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he made a contact with the public where nobody had ever done before.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy to project your personality from the back of a band with no melody
Yeah.
and impress the audience. And he could do it because he had such great showmanship and such a great sense of the dynamics.
So he really kind of opened the door and paved that way.
Sure.
And you kind of, what's amazing is you experienced the real part of that excitement of the beginning of the American drum set starting point. And it was
Well, I played with Benny Goodman for 3.5 years after the movie came out, the Benny Goodman story. And that gave a lot of renewed interest to the band.
Right.
So suddenly I was playing that music I grew up listening to.
So how'd you make the connection with Benny Goodman to play with the band?
They called me up. I was on Woody Herman's band. And they said, Benny would like to hear you play. I said, well, I'm with Woody. He said, no, Benny wants to hear you play. Come up to Carnegie Hall Rehearsal Studios and let Benny hear you. So I go up there, and Mel Powell is the piano player.
Right.
He was a great arranger and a great player, but I didn't know that. Just a big, tall piano player to me. And Benny, I didn't know much about him. I didn't really concentrate on him too much.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, let's play Lady Be Good. We play one tune after another for 2 hours. Nobody says a word. At the end of 2 hours, Benny puts the clarinet down and says, be at the Waldorf tonight, wear a dark suit. And walked out of the rehearsal. So I had to find out from Mel Powell where the Waldorf was. And I had one suit, which fortunately was a dark one. So I get there, and it's a sunken ballroom. Like the tables for the food were tiers,
Right.
and down in the center is the dance floor.
Right.
So they would play a dance set, a concert set, and a dance set. And Benny sends the manager up to me, and he says, Benny wants you to play the next concert set. Now this is with no rehearsal. I don't have my drums there. I never heard any of the tunes. I'm going to sit in and play in front of a live audience, which is quite critical.
That's incredible.
So Mousy Alexander said, look, kid, don't worry about me. I've already given my notice. I'm leaving the band. So you're not hurting my feelings. I'll help you all I can. He said, this is a hell of a way to audition on somebody else's drum site reading a live concert. He said, that's tough.
The pressure's on.
Yeah, so he said, I'll help you all I can. I'll talk you through the charts, which he did. So I played pretty well, and Mel Powell leaned through the piano. He was about 6'5", stuck out his hand and says, congratulations, young man.
How powerful.
And Mousy Alexander says, you played that show exactly like I did. You really listened. I said, well, just remember, music to Benny Goodman is time. Just play as steady as you can.
Right.
And he said, I hope you get the gig. And I did.
And you were there for how long?
3.5 years.
Now what happened with Woody Herman? Because you were with Woody Herman at the time,
Well,
right?
so what I asked Benny's manager, he says, don't worry about that. Benny will take care of it. And whatever he did, he did.
And how'd you hook up with Woody Herman before that?
Sonny Igo recommended me.
Oh, interesting. Now, Sonny Igo was also a student of Henry Adler.
Right.
How did you meet Sonny? Was that years before?
Well, it was in Emporia, Kansas. He came through with Woody's band when I was a teenager.
And you just kind
So I went backstage and wanted to talk to him. He was such a nice guy. He talked to me for his whole half-hour break. He couldn't have been nicer.
Yeah.
And so when I went to New York, I looked him up. And he said, this little kid from Kansas is here? I said, yeah. He said, well, okay, I'll help you out. And he gave me some lessons, and he said, you know, you don't need any more lessons. I said, really? I said, well, I'm sure I do. I said, no, you don't need any more lessons. You just need to play more. And I thought to myself, he won't show me the secret. He's going to keep me from getting where I want to go. Well, he was right. I just needed experience. He recommended me to Woody Herman's band. So I auditioned for Woody and got the job. Amongst about 10 other drummers that wanted the gig. So I see Woody years later at the London House in Chicago. I was working there with Joe Bushkin, the piano player.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, you know, Woody, I couldn't have done the job with Benny if it wasn't for the 6 months I spent on your band. He said, well, I really appreciate that. He says, you know who recommended you? He said, Sonny Igo? He says, no, Al Cohn, the tenor player and arranger.
Oh, really?
And he said, Al told me, he said, this kid could be the best drummer you ever had, Woody, but you're going to have to wait on him. He's awful green, awful green. But he's got a lot of talent. He could be your best drummer. And Woody told me that all these years later.
How amazing. So they saw the potential in what you had. What was your driving force? Because you always had an intensity to play and continue to learn. What was that?
Well, when I was in high school, maybe the 9th grade, I thought, you know, how am I going to get out of Kansas? This was before jet aircraft.
Yeah.
It's before the color TV, not to mention all the things you can do with a TV set today with all the attachments, computers.
Right.
None of that existed.
Yeah.
So how do I get out of this place? I knew that playing the drums was my way to get out of Kansas
Interesting.
and to do something I wanted to do. So I just had to figure out, how am I going to get out of here? So I thought, well, you know what? My only chance is to get better where I am. I can't wait for a break.
Yeah.
I have to start getting better now. And my grades went from C+ to straight A's.
Wow.
With that one single decision. That gave me confidence in, gee, this could work for a lot of things. So I decided to pattern myself after famous drummers. Buddy Rich, Louis Bellson, Gene Krupa, the swing drummers, Philly Joe Jones, Max Roach. And I didn't expect to do as good as they did, but if I could do 90% of what each one of them did,
Yeah.
I'd be all right.
Yeah, powerful.
Like you take Buddy Rich's ability, Louis Bellson's personality,
Yeah.
not that he was a great player,
Yeah.
and Sonny Igo, his contribution to big band drumming,
Great
and
big band.
slop that all together, and I had something. And I realized in that process I could learn to do anything anybody else could do.
Interesting.
The key is you may not learn how to do it as well, but you might be able to do it almost as well. So you don't have to do what other people do 100%. You just have to be able to do it very well.
Interesting.
And that means nothing can hold you back because you can learn anything.
That is a real proactive, personal decision that you made, which really has carried through with you being a player,
Yeah.
with you being a clinician, and with the business that you run with Aquarian.
That's true.
That was a personality choice that once you made that really has stayed with you through your entire life.
It gave me confidence.
Absolutely, that's powerful. So now you go to New York. When did you meet Henry Adler?
Well, first when I got to New York, I went to see the Louis Bellson Clinic because he's the one who told me to go there 2 years before.
Interesting.
So you're as good as you're going to get if you stay in Kansas. Go to New York or LA and study. So I see him at the clinic, and he recognizes me. I can see on his face, he says, my God, what have I done? I hope he doesn't ask me for money. You know? But he was very nice, and then a short time after that, we were doing the first drummer-ramas for Rogers Drums, the first dual clinics.
Yeah.
Well, I'd been doing the Merv Griffin show, and I hadn't been playing any drum solos. And you know, on a clinic, you got to play some solos because you're usually by yourself.
Absolutely.
So I'm doing the clinic, and Louis late coming in from LA, his plane was late. So I get the question and answer session. So a guy asked me, how do you get a good chick on your hi-hat? I said, buy her a drink. And everybody broke up, and I discovered a new part of my personality. I could tell jokes or make something humorous.
Yeah.
So when I came off the stage, this big, tall gentleman came up to me and he says, young man, you play very well, but you're holding that left hand all wrong. I thought he was kidding because I had, as you know, a way better than average left hand.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I realize that, sir. It's just that it's been working so good lately, I hate to fool around with it. I said, I don't like your attitude.
He
I
said,
said, why not? I said, I'll have you know I've been teaching drums for 30 years. I said, it sounds to me like you taught one year 30 times. It's a difference.
Oh, man.
That's how all that got started. So that became a featured part of my clinics, the humor.
Right.
And I found it worked well. And it gave me an outlet with my personality that I couldn't get out any other way,
Yeah.
talking to an audience.
How powerful.
But I was determined to be I remember telling my mother, she was ironing, I got my practice pad on the corner on the little sink area, and I'm practicing. I said, you know, Mom, I think I'll be a great drummer. She said, that's nice, you know, that's very good. I said, no, I'm not telling you I want to be. I'm telling you I think I'm going to be. There's a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
And I never gave up on that thought.
How
I
powerful.
thought I could do it.
How powerful.
And then I got a few breaks, but I always worked hard. And I always tried to learn from everything that came my way. Even if it wasn't something I was going to do or use or needed.
Yeah.
I just got in the habit of being a lean, mean learning machine.
Yeah.
Anything, like when I worked with the salesman at the Rogers Drums doing clinics, I would talk to the rep in the car. We'd be driving for 6 hours. Well, I figured I got to learn something from this guy.
Yeah.
So whatever he had to offer, I remembered it. And my mother had the greatest memory. She could tell you a story, and 40 years later tell you the same story. It would be exactly the same, same words. I have that gift. I inherited from her.
Interesting.
And that allowed me to have these conversations, store them away, then draw them when I needed them. Even though I hadn't known I would be needing them.
Yeah.
I just collected it. and it stuck. And that made me somewhat different than the average guy, I think.
How amazing, because anytime I've traveled with anyone that has traveled with you, that's one of the things they always remember. That you talked to them, and then years later when you saw them, the conversation carried on right where it left off.
That's true, yeah.
That's amazing. That really is an amazing gift. That
Yeah,
really is.
I owe my mother a lot. She
Wow.
was really the strength that kept me going. So my dad, excuse me,
Yeah.
he was a butcher. His family made him quit school and go to work, and took his money. My mother finally got him out of that relationship. Said, Lester, you're going to come and live with me, you're going to forget your family, or it's off. So he acquiesced, and the problem was he didn't really have an education, and he was always felt bad about it. So I'm studying Latin American rhythms with my teacher in Kansas City. That's a 4.5-hour train ride each way. So my dad says, what does he have to go to Kansas City for? So my mom was trying to explain to him. He said, well, he's studying Latin. He says, what the hell does he need to know a foreign language for just to play the goddamn drums? He didn't get it. You know. So my father never came to see me play the drums.
Really?
Yeah.
How amazing. Well, it sounds like your mom was incredibly supportive, and,
Yeah.
and that was the impetus of you doing a lot of things that you did.
Well, you could say I never got my father's approval. But I got something more important. I got my approval.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is very, very powerful.
Yeah, I did.
What got you involved with doing the clinics? Where you got involved with the companies and you started going out
Well, I
there?
did some clinics for Rogers, and people really liked them.
Yeah.
Henry Adler gave me some good advice on how to put them together. And again, the question and answer sessions became the strength of the clinic.
Right.
Until I learned a program, which, you know, getting a program to present is not an easy or a quick thing to do.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah.
So I did these clinics for Rogers, and when they would ask me to do a clinic, I said, I can't do it this week, I'm doing a TV show. Next week, I'm not doing anything. Well, we don't have anything. So I was not available enough to them to put a program together.
Interesting.
So they said, why don't you just come and work for us completely? And Don Kennedy had the idea. He just passed away, by the way.
Wow.
Well, you'll be an artist in residence. No one's ever done that in
Never
corporate.
before, yeah.
And you'll do concerts and play and continue your career, and you'll work for Rogers Drums. I said, I'll do it. So my wife was dead set against it. Oh, they're going to put you behind a desk and they're going to bury you there. I said, no, they won't. She says, how do you know? I said, because I want to do what I want to do.
Yeah, right.
So the first night we were at Don Kennedy's house. I was there alone. My wife was still in New York with the kids. And he says, you know, Roy, I don't think this is going to work out. I said, why not? Well, he said, if you want to play gigs and do this traveling and stuff, you're going to be in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. And if you're not there, they're going to get upset. I said, well, I'm going to go out and play when I want to. When I get done playing, I'll come in at 11 or 11:30.
Yeah.
He's very unhappy. So he shows up at the office the next morning. I'm already there. He said, what are you doing here so early? I was at your house last night. Remember, I wasn't playing. He said, you're going to be like that, huh? I said, yeah. But I'll get everything done that you need.
Yeah.
So I started doing the clinics on a full-time basis.
Interesting.
And they sent me all over the world. I was the first, which you pointed out to me in that article.
Absolutely.
The first guy to do clinics outside the U.S.
Internationally. And you'd go to music stores, right? And
Little stores, big stores, whatever.
Absolutely. They'd welcome you in. I remember when I was younger, when I went to a Roy Burns clinic, it was always jam-packed. We came in. You always played great. You always gave us great information to practice. It was a fun time. We laughed. And it really brought a different image to drum playing. You know, it was like this was a fun event.
Right.
And that's really the groundwork that you lay down, which now everyone does simply because you opened that door.
Well, one of the nice things, I was talking with our distributor from New Zealand, a really great guy. His name is Rob. And we traveled and did clinics in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the fact that I was in a guy's store. He said, Roy, you always did your best. And you alluded to that. Wherever you saw me play, I was always at the top of my form.
Yeah.
I was always prepared. I was not hungover. I wasn't out of shape.
Yeah.
Anytime I played, I did my best. So some guy in New Zealand says, you know, Roy Burns was in my store and he played the drums for us. They're still talking about it. And we're talking 30 years ago. Because it's a personal touch.
Yeah.
The personal contact. And that's powerful.
It's very powerful. But you've done that consistently.
Yeah.
Event after event after event for a long period of time. That's amazing. Now you played an event at Modern Drummer, which I remember with many other great drummers that were up there. I think Vic Firth was there.
Vic Firth.
Don Lombardi. Who else was I think?
Maury Brockstein, Herbie Brockstein.
Herb Brockstein was there, exactly,
and
right?
Spagnoli.
Right, and Ron Spagnoli, yeah. And they played together, and I must say, I remember I had talked to you before then, and you hadn't played for a while, but you kind of got yourself in shape,
Yeah.
but you played incredible. You played absolutely incredible. We've got footage of that, and that really was your last performance of what you did, I
It was
believe.
my last live performance.
Yeah.
At least I went out on top.
You went out way on top because it was incredible. And I mean, now with the running of the company of Aquarian, it's a whole nother level of intensity that you have taken on in the process.
When I came home one day from work, I was so frustrated at Rogers because it's such stupid management.
Yeah.
I mean, just incompetent. Not greedy, just incompetent.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I said, I think I'm going to start my own company. She says, you must be crazy. Would you like to see somebody? I said, like a psychiatrist? She said, yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Those people are from CBS. They must know something. I said, not the group that's running Rogers Drums because they're running it into the ground. And I can't do any worse than that.
Yeah.
And I have a friend, a partner, who's going to do the manufacturing. Well, we've been together 35 years and haven't had an argument.
That's amazing. That's
My wife and I can't say that. But we've had differences of opinion, but never a lack of respect.
Yeah.
Where when you get in an argument, you say things you wish you hadn't said.
Yeah.
We've never had a moment like that.
What's amazing about it is the product that you have, Aquarian, is an absolutely great, consistent quality product. No matter where I go, when I hear players that are playing it, and as I have played some on occasion, they always sound great. That's coming from you. I think you have a very, very important part.
Well, my partner, Ron, who runs the manufacturing, he's more of a nitpicker than I am, if that's possible. But see, what I found out working at Rogers, you have to have a musician in a position of power in the company.
Right.
He doesn't have to run it. He doesn't have to be the last word. He doesn't have to be the president.
Right.
He has to have some power.
Right.
So when something comes through, he said, that's not good. So one of our foremen came in with a drum head. He said, I found an easier way to make this head. I said, what'd you do? And he told me. I said, well, let's try it. Put on a snare drum. I said, it doesn't sound as good as what we're making now. He said, yeah, but it's so much easier to make it.
Yeah.
So we're going to make it the hard way because that's what the guy's paying for. I'm that guy.
Right.
I'm the guy who says, hold it.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound good.
Right. Right.
I don't know anything about mathematics or anything like that, you know.
Yeah.
So when I was first married, we had this tiny little New York apartment where you had to stand sideways to get into the kitchen. And the water faucet was broken. So I told my wife, don't worry about it, I'll fix it. I took a pair of pliers and broke it in 2 minutes. She hasn't let me fix anything since, and we've been married 60 years. So maybe I did the right thing by accident.
I'm going to start using that line when I get back home for sure. So with the company now, Ron handles the manufacturing. So you're still in the process of trying the heads out and even the new practice pads that you have out now, which sound fantastic.
Yeah, I was instrumental in that, I must say. I mean, some of our products, there's always more people involved. There's never one guy.
Yeah.
But there are projects where I have more involvement than some others. It just depends on who has the best idea at the moment.
That's amazing how powerful it is. You know, I want to try something with you. I want to mention a couple names of drummers, and I want you just to give me a quick thought of what you remember from them.
Okay.
If I mention Buddy Rich.
Well, extraordinary talent. And he's the type of guy that Gene Krupa said about him. He doesn't have to practice stuff like us. He just can play it.
Yeah.
So an example of that was when Jim Chapin asked Buddy Rich, you seem to have improved your left hand over the years. How did you do that? Buddy says, I willed it.
I willed it. I remember that story.
And he could think of something and play it. So I'm working at the Metropole in the afternoon, my own trio. So Buddy comes in and is talking to the manager down in the front of the club, and I can see him, he waves. So I thought, well, I'll play one of my good licks for him. And it was a 4-bar break, and it was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it's the bass drum on the third tom-tom lick.
Yeah.
Just like that. But a medium tone. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I went to Birdland that night to see Buddy Rich play. And he's playing fours, goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and looked at me and smiled. He played my lick back to me. Just hearing it once. I thought, you son of a gun.
He had that.
And he looked at me, not an arrogant look, it's just like a little smile. Says, I heard you. I got you covered, kid. So he could play what he could hear, which is quite amazing. And if he hadn't had such a tumultuous upbringing, he might have been a happier person.
Yeah.
Because he could be pretty moody.
Yeah.
That's not a criticism, it's just an observation.
Yeah, he had a tough childhood,
Yeah.
Gene Krupa.
Very nice man, I worked opposite him. I was doing the Merv Griffin show, and he came on as a guest band leader. We'd have a guest band leader for a week, and he would play one of his tunes. Now, the drums were down in front by the saxophones.
Right.
So he said, Roy, play Time behind me. It'll help me. You want me to play Time behind Gene Krupa? Are you kidding? He says, no, it'll help me out because I'm so far down in front of the saxes.
It's hard to hear.
I can't feel the rhythm section.
Yeah.
So I played Time very conservatively behind him while he played his tunes on the show. And he was very nice about that. We had coffee one day, and he talked about the Swiss rudiments, and he told me how he would lie in a bed in a hotel room. He'd look up at the ceiling, and he'd notice that one of the corners wasn't lined up right. So that would keep him awake all night. It would drive him crazy. Why didn't the guy make that line straight? Why was the nail out of place? He said it drove him crazy. He volunteered that story. So that's one I'm sure most people haven't heard.
How absolutely true.
But he was a very nice man, especially near the end of his life.
A real gentleman, right? Everybody says.
That was my experience. Yeah.
Louis Bellson.
Oh, he was my mentor. He's the one who told me, kid, you're as good as you're going to get if you stay in Kansas. Go to New York, LA, and study.
Yeah.
So after we did our first clinic together, he said, you know, Roy, I never saw anybody improve as much as you did in that amount of time. Whatever you're doing, as long as it's not illegal, keep it up.
How great.
And he said, and by the way, you know I can play. I know you can play. Why shouldn't we have a good time?
Beautiful.
How generous.
Beautiful.
And I learned that from him. And I thought, you know, if I could ever be like that guy, not to copy him,
Yeah.
but if I could be that approachable, that reasonable, that nice to younger players,
Yeah.
it would be a good way to be.
Boy, you have done that well.
Thank
Someone like Papa Joe Jones.
I didn't know him very well. I played when I first got to New York, I played a concert opposite him. He was in one group and I was in the other group.
Yeah.
And but he sure had a great brush sound.
Yeah.
You couldn't take that away.
Yeah.
For sure. He was a little bit weird. You understand what I'm trying to say in a nice way, right?
I understand totally.
He was a character.
I knew Papa Joe Jones well, for sure.
So I was never very close to him, but I worked opposite him a few times.
Yeah.
He was a great player. You had to admit it, you know.
How about Max Roach?
I met him a few times when I was doing I was the house drummer for the Monterey Jazz Festival for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
And he was on the concert one year. And I got to know him a little bit. And I'd met him with Sonny Igo when I was a bit younger, when I first joined Benny's band.
Yeah.
So when he said, Roy's with Benny Goodman's band, Max said, he must be a wizard. I said, hardly, not at all, not at all. But he played the most musical solos.
Yeah.
And he was a very nice guy. He had a real musical approach.
Yeah.
And he had his own sound.
Yeah.
And you know, when you get your own sound, that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah.
More than people tend to give it credit.
Credit for you, absolutely.
What I did was synthesize all the styles that preceded me and put them into a style that suited my purposes.
Right.
But I wasn't a breakthrough kind of guy, a futurist, if you will.
Yeah.
I wasn't playing the new way. I was gathering and combining everything I learned before me. So I was based more on the guys who preceded me, as opposed to being a guy who would break through with an entirely new style like Jack DeDejet or somebody like that.
Yeah. But you really, you always knew who you were. You always stayed true to that level of not being anything more than you just pushing yourself in your own way as hard as you could, which is an incredible standard. Your reputation in the industry is so incredible. Everyone that I see in my travels, and your name comes up extremely often globally as I travel, because people still remember the vividness of all of your events. And when your name comes up, I smile at it because I say, my gosh, what an incredible legacy you have left that globally everyone still remembers like it was yesterday when you performed.
I know.
When I go on the internet and I watch some of the footage that you have on there, it blows me away. Your absolute musicianship, your technical facility, your chops and your playing were at a high level all the time.
Well, I kept it in balance, as we were talking on the way over here.
Yeah.
Always put the music first.
Yeah.
So my ability served the music rather than the music being a kickoff for my so-called talent.
Right.
Because the younger guy will try to play a good example, a guy from Arizona, I forget his name, said I gave him good advice on how to do clinics because he was playing in front of drummers. He said, Roy, they're all drummers out there. So I get really nervous. I do all kinds of recording dates. I never get nervous. But put me in front of a bunch of drummers, I'm nervous. I said, they're all drummers out there, right? I said, yeah. I said, are they going to hire you? He said, no. I said, what's to be nervous about? And he said, they got him off, like he changed his whole attitude.
That's beautiful. In closing, these are really done for future generations of wonderful, desired young musicians to watch and be inspired by your words. What would you leave for the next generation to understand about what you have done and just the general music industry? That's
a big question.
It is.
I think you have to be true to yourself, because a few times I was approached, a booking agency out of New York City wanted to build a big band around me.
Yeah.
And you're going to be the star leader. This is after I left Benny's band.
Yeah.
So I went home and I was thinking about this, and I didn't have to put up any money, but I'm going to be the star.
Yeah.
And I thought, what can I do here? And I looked in the mirror, and I thought, do I have a strong enough musical point of view to be a band leader? What am I going to do, tell the trumpets to play louder? I don't know anything about teaching the trumpets or conducting a band.
Yeah.
I'm a good star player because I can be a good supportive player and a featured player.
Yeah.
But I'm not a band leader type personality.
Right, right.
So I thought to myself, you better be honest with yourself, because if you do this thing and it doesn't fit you, it's going to be a disaster, and you may never recover from it. Well, years later, I'm in New York City doing a TV show, and the lady says, Maynard Ferguson's going to be on the show. Do you think you could do something with just trumpet and drum? I thought, she doesn't know anything. You know? So I said, call him up and ask him if he'd bring his bass player and piano player down. We'll play some tunes for you on the show, and we're going to give you a good thing. Now, I'd never met Maynard. So he comes in, he's very nice, we run over some tunes, he'll play some fours, hit the ending, you know the routine.
Yes, yes.
So we go to have lunch, he orders a bottle of wine, he says, this is the real rehearsal, Roy. So we had a glass of wine, not a lot, we each had a glass. Now he says, you know, when I was around New York a lot, there was this booking agency, they got to get this young kid and build him up and clean him out, and take every dime he has, and just rape his career.
Wow.
He said, that was you, Roy. That was the complete story of that thing about putting me in front of a band.
How amazing.
They were setting me up for a fall and going to clean me out for every cent they could make with me and leave me with nothing.
Wow.
And what saved me was when I looked in the mirror and said, can you do this?
Yeah.
And the mirror looked back and says, I don't think so. Better do what you know you can do and be honest with yourself.
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line with me. Be honest with yourself. If you're honest with no one else, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
But be honest with yourself, because it'll come back to haunt you.
That is the best advice that could be heard by anybody as we do this here. Roy, it is always great. I met you in 1976. You have been a mentor of mine. I have always looked up to you in the highest regards and still do. You are still a major force in the music industry, not just the percussion industry, in the music industry. It's powerful what you have achieved and the legacy that you have left. I thank you so much on behalf of the sessions. We thank you for your time and your valuable information and your spirit.
Well, all you young drummers out there, pay attention to this man Dom. He's got some good ideas.
Thank you so much, Roy. Thank you so much.